that are having a paralyzing effect on our economic growth. Joining us is Brad Anderson, former CEO and vice chairman of Best Buy, and now he's member of the Job Creators Alliance. Brad, welcome to you. What is the best thing government can do at this point to create more jobs?
Well, if you're going to create a job, you got to get customers you believe you can serve better than somebody else can. But you've also got to interest investors. And in an environment in which the regulatory climate keeps getting more complex and more complicated, and the horizon is very unclear, it terrifies people in terms of investing. It's part of the reason you see so much conservative and capital protection instead of going into the market to try to create new wealth. We won't actually get the economy rolling again until we get that, until we get people actually hiring. And I think I'd like to see our country focused as much as it can on creating a highway for job creators that makes sense for people to invest and take the risk that it takes and the optimism, put the optimism back in the market that it takes to actually create some jobs.
Hey, Brad, we've talked about these 7 new regulations. What do they really entail? I mean, are we talking Environmental Protection Agency? Exactly what are some of these regulations and some of the more egregious ones in your mind in terms of preventing small business from growing?
Well, I don't know that these particular regulations range from about $20 billion to up to $100 billion each in terms of, or $1 to about $100 billion in terms of what their potential cost is. Most of them are coming from the Department of Transportation or EPA, and they have to do with regulations for emissions and stuff. And I'm not a technical, so I can't tell you the merits of the particular. But there are so many regulations. Actually, a lot of us got involved in Job Creators Alliance because there's so many different kinds of regulations like these most recently announced that if you look at almost any ecosystem, whether it's banking, food, transportation, there's a regulatory climate that's gotten much more complex over the last couple of years, and it really adds a tremendous burden to people who are operating businesses, let alone, most important is people who are starting and going to compete with new businesses.
It is a complex regulatory environment these days, Brad, as you're illustrating here, but aren't there some regulations out there that could actually be beneficial and help protect employees and consumers?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not an anarchist, and you can point to all sorts of environmental regulations and a lot of things that have. I think historically, one of the reasons I'm 62, and when I was a kid, the environment was in a lot worse shape than it is today. A lot of those things came out of regulation. So the intent of most regulations is good, but I think what we're feeling like is missing is the unintended consequence of adding the complexity of this kind of, that's literally not even looked at in terms of what are the unintended consequences if we add this kind of regulatory environment on the overall economy. And that seems to be, especially if you take these in total, very, very burdensome on economic growth.
Brad, finally, what could you possibly hear from the president next week that would put a smile on your face?
Well, I'm not a politician. The answer will tell you this, but I think if the president were to sit down with us and say, you know, I'm running a country that's already borrowing 40 cents of every dollar it spends, so I can't give you tax reductions, and I really can't go spend a lot of money to try to create jobs. What we can do is try to create an environment that meets sort of the historical parameters of the country that helps further people taking the courage to go into the market and create these new jobs. So I'm going to look at the administration and everything we can do to try to open the highway for people who create new jobs we'll try to do.
In a couple of seconds, Brad, are you confident in Washington right now?
I think Americans disagree about the future, and I think I'm less pessimistic because I think Washington represents the disagreement we have as Americans on what to do next.
Brad Anderson, many thanks for your time.